You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, patrons, and welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And for those of you who've been with us for a while, you know that we have adopted 3 monuments on the battlefield, and one of them is the monument to the 111th New York. In fact, the statue that's on top of the monument is our new logo done by Mike Stretch. And one of our followers on Facebook, I don't know if he's a listener. Are you a listener, Martin?
I am. I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts.
Very smart man.
I know.
So a listener and a follower on Facebook contacted us, and he wrote a book called The 111th New York Volunteer Infantry, a Civil War History. His name is Martin W. Husk, and he joins us today. Hey, Martin, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Great. How are you today?
Oh, I am fine. So I read 3 chapters last night. We're gonna talk about those 3 chapters. We're gonna talk about the forming of the regiment, their first assignment at Harpers Ferry, where they also earned the nickname the Harpers Ferry Cowards, along with the rest of their brigade, and finally Gettysburg, where they redeemed themselves.
Very cool.
And then it's up to everybody else to go and buy the book
and fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and learn about the rest of them. But so you, there's an interesting story as to what compelled you to write the book. So why don't you tell us that? Why'd you write the book?
Yeah, so, growing up, my dad would tell us stories about how we had this Irish lineage and, about all his Irish ancestors. So I was working in D.C. at the time, and I thought I would do a little genealogical research. And so one trip to the archives, I looked at the service record for a Captain Lewis Husk, and he had served in the 111th during the war. And, as I'm reading his service record, I'm like, wow, look, there's this packet of information about how he was court-martialed in November of 1864. He had commanded the picket line for their brigade outside of Petersburg. And that got me interested more in the regiment. I'm like, okay, well, what happened to him? What happened to these men that were captured? So I thought, hey, why don't I go to Carlisle Barracks? They've got to have a regimental history. And they didn't. So I thought, well, how hard could it be to write a regimental history? I think I'll do that. And 10 or 11 years later, it got published. And, lo and behold, I found out we don't have any Irish ancestors. So
really?
It was a win-win for everybody.
So you're not Irish at all?
Not even close. No,
but you kind of look it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's it's Dutch, English, and what else? English. Yeah. So,
okay.
And
so
German,
it's the English that I'm seeing.
Yeah, pretty much so.
Yeah. So you write the book. It took you 10 or 11 years to finish.
Yeah, and most of that was just research, because that's the part I really like, is going looking at documents. And, there's always something else to find, another piece of information. Finally, my wife's like, look, you have to stop, and enough is enough. You're done. Let's be done. Right. And I was. So, the boss spoke, and the book was done.
So we had Noah Andre Trudeau on a while ago, and we talked a lot about his process. So when 10 or 11 years, I hear that, I write these narrative episodes for this, and I'm only on episode 3. And we just get to the battle on episode 3, and they take me about a year to complete from, research to final edit and all that for the recordings. And I'm just like, why did I start doing this in the first place? Because I don't have the attention span to do something for 10 or 11 years. But as I'm doing this, I'm like, this is probably going to take me 10 or 11 years to complete. So how do you keep yourself on track?
It was difficult, that over that span of time, it was, 2 or 3 job changes, a couple of moves, 2 kids. So, trying to write on weekends at night after work, trying to find time to go do research. A lot of the primary source material was in upstate New York. So traveling from Maryland to upstate New York or getting in touch with historical societies, it took a lot of time. The good thing about working in D.C. is I worked on the other side of the mall from the archives. So every day at lunch, I had a half an hour. So I'd run across the mall, I'd go and look at the records I requested the day before, put in some new requests and go back to work. And I did that every day for like a year and a half.
That doesn't sound like enough time.
It wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially at the National Archives. Like I wouldn't want to, I think I would just lose my job because I would overstay my lunch.
Yeah, there were a couple of times where I was like sneaking back into the building because, I was like a half hour to 45 minutes late coming back from lunch. So
yeah, so you complete it, and then you got to get it published. So was it hard finding a publisher?
It was hard finding a publisher because I think a lot of regimental histories, when I was trying to get it published, had gone down that route of, it's not just a history of the regiment and the battles. It's now more of a social history. Mm-hmm. You look at the regimental in the 1st Minnesota kept coming up as the example that I should use. I'm like, well, I'm not interested in that. And, I'm writing this for me as much as I am for, the descendants of the men who served in this regiment. And I don't know that they're so much interested in what was going on at home during the war as they are what was the experience of the soldiers that went to war.
Yes.
So that was difficult because that things had changed in the publishing world about what publishers felt readers wanted with a regimental.
Yeah, and there is an audience for talking about what was going on at the home front too, but there's also an audience for this. So yeah, this is your book, and McFarland was the publishing company that finally published it, right?
They did, yeah. So they were pretty open to saying, yeah, we'll publish it, and it took a while to get to them, but yeah, they were really good to work with.
All right. Well, so then let's start with Chapter 1, Answering the Call, it's called. Where was the regiment raised?
Yeah, so they're from Wayne and Cayuga counties in upstate New York. So that is sort of west central between Rochester and Syracuse, the northern parts of both counties border Lake Ontario, and then the southern parts of Cayuga County are down near the Finger Lakes, sort of give you kind of geographical reference of where they're from.
Okay. Yeah, and how are you saying that? Cayuga County?
Cayuga County.
Cayuga.
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
Cayuga. Yeah. Cayuga. Yeah, those names are kind of hard to pronounce. So what kind of men would go out and join up with the 111th in New York? What walks of life were they all from?
Yeah, I think if you look at it, it was sort of a snapshot, almost like every regiment. You had a lot of farmers because the nature of the geography, but you also had a lot of fishermen because of where they were with reference to Lake Ontario. Every tradesman, wagon makers, barrel makers, bookbinders, glass blowers. There were students, lawyers, doctors. One of the men was actually mining gold in California before the war broke out, and and then came back to join up. So yeah, just about any profession you can think of, that's where they were. And nationalities, the same thing, kind of ran the gamut. You could see a lot of the countries of their people that were immigrating, in the middle of the 19th century were represented. You had Lieutenant Colonel McDougall was obviously Scottish. You had a lot of English, French, Dutch, and probably predominantly most of them were born and raised in America. But again, you had a lot of foreign-born soldiers as well.
And then you have a wide age range as well, too, right?
A very wide, yeah.
Colonel's almost like 60 years old.
Yeah, he was 58 years old when he joined. I'm not sure why he thought that would be a really great career choice for him at 58 to join up and go fight, but he did.
That's duty. That's duty.
Yeah, I guess so.
Sense of duty.
It's something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple other officers in their 50s. 71 soldiers were in their 40s.
Wow.
Out of the original, 1,042 that enlisted. And then most, like every regiment were in that range between 18 and, early 30s.
Right.
And then 18 is always the official age of everybody that is actually under 18.
Right, of course.
So, right. So, well, you're 15, okay, but actually you're 18.
Right.
Right? Yes, you're 18. Yeah, so because there were rumors that, some soldiers like Private Morris Welch was actually 14 when he enlisted. Wow. So, yeah, I think there were some that fell into that 15 to 17 age bracket.
Yeah, I read that part about all the people over 40 and or in their 40s, and I was just like, how the hell did they do that? Like, I can't go for a walk around the block without needing to take a nap, and these guys are joining the infantry. Like, there was a different generation for sure.
Yeah, I think it's it's that patriotic zeal meets reality at some point, and they're like, what the hell were we thinking?
Yeah, well, right, and they do kind of. There are a few that desert pretty early on, right, when they realize after they leave. They begin to go down. Where are they going first? Baltimore? Is that where their first destination is?
So that was their first destination, Baltimore. And they're slated to go join the Army of the Potomac, but when they get to Baltimore, orders are changed, and then they're rerouted to Harpers Ferry. And that's how they end up there.
A fateful decision for them.
Yes, it was.
So how did they settle in when they get to Harpers Ferry? What is their task? What is their duty? They're part of the garrison there, I'm assuming, right?
Yep, they are. So the first thing they do is they set up camp on Camp Hill, which is it's sort of between Bolivar Heights and downtown Harpers Ferry. It's the heights above Harpers Ferry. So they set into camp there.
Isn't there a school there or something now? A college? I
think so. Yeah, there's something up there. I don't know what it is.
Right? But I think I know where you're talking about. If you're taking that main road out of Harpers Ferry up the hill, and then you would make a left to get to Camp Hill, right?
Yeah, right on that part right there.
Yes. Okay. So that's where they are. And
so they're doing the normal thing because one of the first things they do is they get rifles because they leave Auburn with all their accoutrements, and no weapons.
Right. So, I think you said the only weapons in the regiment were those pistols and swords carried by the officers.
Yeah, which was for some of the men when they were going through Baltimore was pretty scary. And a lot of them knew what had happened the year before when, the 6th Massachusetts met the angry mob. And, this guy's a little worried about that because, we're not armed. And so they get their weapons, and then they set about drilling, setting up camp, taking their turn on the picket line. So just sort of normal kind of garrison duty for a soldier. Very strict schedule of drill. In the mornings, the school of the soldier, learning how to handle your weapon. Then school of the company, then school of the battalion. So it's that iteration of learning how to be a soldier, learning how to maneuver as a company and maneuver as a regiment.
And did they take to it well?
I think so. They didn't really have a choice. So some of them, I think, it probably got old really quick. There were a couple guys that deserted. There was one soldier who deserted when they were in Baltimore. I mean, they hadn't even been with the regiment for 2 days.
Right.
I'm out of here.
That was the one I was thinking of. He was like, yeah, this sucks. And he's gone.
He was probably one of those 40-year-olds.
Yeah, that would be me.
I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So they're drilling, they're learning how to be soldiers while they're in garrison. When exactly is this that they're sent to Harpers Ferry?
So this is right at the end of September. So they get to Harpers Ferry.
September of 62?
62. Sorry, 62. Yeah.
So at the end of
August. 62. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So they're at the end of August 62.
Yeah.
Right before all the fun starts.
Yeah, and so what's going to be happening to them after being there only a few weeks? Yeah,
so Stonewall Jackson and his army show up. Lee is driving north into Maryland, and right around, like, September 12th, the 3 companies of the regiment are ordered across the river into Maryland over to one of the gaps in
Solomon's Gap.
the mountains, or Solomon's Gap, right? And they're basically bystanders. That's really their first action, is to watch the 39th New York get pushed out of the gap. And
this episode is now available over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. Please help support the show and become a patron today.